It's been a year exactly since I started my little YouTube channel at the end of March 2023, and just the fact that it has been a year of me making videos, editing, learning a lot, reading a lot, it's a bit wild to me. I'm a kind of person who starts things very easily but doesn't necessarily stick to them in the long term. So the fact that it's been already a year since I've been on BookTube is actually something I'm really proud of. Originally, I filmed the BookTube Newbie Tag as my first video, and then watching back the footage, I hated every second of it. So I ended up scrapping it, deleting the footage completely, and recorded a reading wrap-up as my first video, which then I ended up posting, as I said, at the end of March 2023, and that started the journey for me. Ever since, I thought about doing the BookTube Newbie Tag from time to time, but the moment never felt quite right. So I thought the 1 year anniversary of me starting BookTube would be the perfect opportunity to do the BookTube Newbie Tag and kind of reflect on the process and my journey so far. I actually ended up mixing the questions a little bit. So there is the original BookTube Newbie Tag, which most of the channels present, but I actually found a BookTube Newbie Tag 2.0 question list on Goodreads. I will of course mention all the details in the description box, but I ended up mixing the two lists of questions together, like cherry picking the ones that I really like or the ones that I found interesting. I ended up selecting 10 questions for this video, so I will go through them one by one. The first one being, why did you start this channel? And the answer to this is rather easy. So back in March, or actually in January 2023, I quit my full-time job at a performance marketing agency because I was burnt out. I felt like all I did was work, and I felt like I didn't have anything that was just me, that defined my personality in terms of a hobby or a passion project. And I have been watching BookTube videos for, I think, around 10 years now or so. And I felt like I wanted to do something that makes me happy. Reading books makes me happy, talking about books makes me happy. So it was a little passion project for me to start this channel and basically start my journey of healing from burnout. For second question, I picked, what genres would you like to see talked about more on BookTube? I wouldn't necessarily say it's a genre, but I would like to see more translated fiction being talked about, because I feel like a majority of BookTubers are English native speakers. Therefore, a majority of the focus is books written in English, or at least that's how I perceive it in the current bubble that I'm in on BookTube. I don't hear much about, for example, I don't know, contemporary Spanish authors or even the Japanese fiction books that are currently mainstream popular. There are very few of them, and people tend to talk about the same books over and over again when it comes to translated fiction. So I would like to see more niche authors, niche genres also being talked about next to all the mainstream books. The third question is, what do you enjoy the most about making BookTube videos? Honestly, the planning part. I love the brainstorming process, making a schedule, drafting a script, and seeing it all come together through the editing process. I cannot say I'm fully satisfied with the level I'm at. Even a year later, I acknowledge that I still have a lot to improve on, but I really enjoy the planning process and the editing as well. By the way, social media is a lie. I'm currently drinking water out of a Christmas mug, just because I already had my black tea in the morning, and I usually only drink one black tea per day. So cheers to that. So the next question is, what are some themes you want to see more of or less of in books? And I specifically chose this question so I can go a little rant about it, about how tropes became so important when reviewing books or even choosing which book to read. And it's definitely something that I myself also fell into this trap, to be honest, that I tend to go for books like I have my favorites. If you watch my previous videos, you know that I like Rivals to Lovers, for example. And the fact that nowadays people choose books based on the tropes they contain and not necessarily based on the execution of those tropes. So what I mean by that is nowadays there are a lot of enemies to lovers books coming out, either in contemporary romance genre or fantasy romance genre, simply because the enemies to lovers trope is so beloved nowadays. And unpopular book opinion, but maybe not everything needs to be enemies to lovers. Or if it's really enemies to lovers, then maybe the emphasis should be more on how it's done well, rather than it's in the book just for the sake of satisfying a certain reader audience. I can dedicate a whole another video to like unpopular book opinions, but just to answer this question, I would like to see less of tropes being included in the story just for the sake of it being included, and more focus on like why these tropes became popular in the first place and how nicely executed they can be, or how you can like reverse tropes or play around with them in the stories. The fifth question is, what book or series got you into reading? And thinking about this question, it wasn't really like a certain book or a series that I can recall, but more like the culture that I was fortunate enough to grow up in that got me into reading. Meaning I had a wonderful literature teacher in school who shared her love of books with us, and all throughout high school I took advanced literature classes, which meant that we were reading a lot more than just the standard literature class. We were reading contemporary. We critically read Hunger Games in school, which I remember I was so stoked about. I loved that class and I loved that teacher, and I think I can say that it was really the environment that got me into reading. My parents, my friends who also loved reading, and we were swapping books, and also the school system, to be honest. I am currently 27 years old, soon 28, and I'm not afraid to admit that I was at my most well-read while I was in high school. I was reading classics, I was reading, as I mentioned, contemporary, Shakespeare, French literature, German literature, just a lot of different things, and it helped me see different point of views, genres and perspectives, and I'm super grateful for that. Next up we have the question, what is a fun fact about you or a hobby besides reading and writing that people on BookTube might not know you have? Fun fact, I don't have writing as a hobby, I have specifically reading as a hobby. A hobby that you might not know that I have is actually cooking. So I love cooking. I am Hungarian, living in Austria, so I cook a bunch of different cuisines, of course Hungarian dishes. My favorite cuisine is Japanese, so I cook a lot of Japanese food. I learn how to cook a lot of Japanese food, always trying new recipes, and together with my fiance we try to cook a variety of things: Chinese, Japanese, Italian, Hungarian, so it's a good mix. So cooking is another hobby that I enjoy next to reading. Next up, what challenges do you think starting a YouTube channel will be the hardest to overcome? So 1 year after starting my channel, I think I had some challenges, and potentially the hardest of them to overcome was that you have to make peace that you cannot appeal to everyone. So I read my books, I share my reviews, and it's perfectly normal that not everybody will like them. Not everybody will like my taste, not everybody will like my way of talking about books. Some will find it too emotionless, some will find it maybe not detailed enough. So I think it's important that you set the expectations to yourself correctly when you start a BookTube channel, that it's not possible to please all of your audience, and you don't need to. That's the magic of YouTube. Like, there are tons of videos out there, even in BookTube. You can watch basically any kind of BookTuber that you can most relate to, and at the end of the day I think the people who share a similar taste in books will find your channel and will interact with you. That's the beauty of the community building part of it. Next we have, when did you start reading, as a question from the original BookTube Newbie Tag. And this also gave me a pause because I cannot really pinpoint a certain age. I never remember not reading. So I will put up some child and middle grade books that I was really into back in the days, but basically I don't remember the certain age that I was when I started reading. I always begged my mom to go to the bookstore when we went out shopping. I remember it was next to like the drugstore and the shoe store, or there were a couple other stores nearby, and I was always like, oh, if we are going to like, I don't know, pick up some shower gel or a new slippers or whatever, can we also stop by the bookstore and just browse through? And I still remember how the corner used to look like, where it was like child or middle grade or kids fiction books. And I remember spending so much time in that little bookstore in my city, just browsing through the shelves as a child and later on as a teenager. So I cannot pinpoint a certain age, but I definitely can recall all the memories that came with loving reading while growing up. Actually, if I want to set the timeline right, so I was eating up books all the way through childhood, high school actually, and when I started university, because I had to read a lot of academic texts, I stopped reading for years and years and years. And I actually rediscovered reading during the pandemic, so around 2019, 2020. That's when I picked up fictional books for the first time in a very long time, and I fell right back in love with reading. And we are down to the last two questions, the first one being, what are some qualities or traits that you look for when it comes to watching other booktubers? To me, qualities and traits are important, but also just the overall vibe of the person. Of course, I usually watch booktubers whose taste matches mine or who partially matches my taste, but also recommends books that maybe I wouldn't hear about otherwise. So it's a little bit out of my comfort zone, but I would be encouraged to pick them up when I watch this YouTuber. So I think that's important, because if I only watch people whose taste exactly aligns with mine, then I'm kinda just in this echo chamber and I miss a lot of books that would be outside this bubble or outside my comfort zone that could still bring value to me as a reader. So I try to challenge myself to also pick up books from time to time that are not in perfect alignment with the usual books that I read. So I think these 2 points are the most important for me: the overall vibe of the person and that they are being informative about the book while still being engaging, which, to be honest, it's one of the hardest balances to strike on BookTube in my opinion, and it's definitely something that I'm still learning myself. And for the last question I picked, what advice would you give to a booktuber that has just created their channel? And allow me to be a little bit sentimental about it. So I also debated for a long time whether or not to start this channel, and I basically created these mental blocks in my head that I needed to have a certain aesthetic to be on BookTube, or I needed to read certain books to be qualified to be on BookTube. But to be honest, that's all in our heads. You don't need to read certain books to start a BookTube. You don't need to have cozy cottagecore aesthetics to be on BookTube. You can just read a book, sit down and start a video and upload it, and that's still valid. I think I stumbled upon a motivational quote on Instagram that helped me change my perspective on this. That was basically, if you ever thought your idea is not unique, just think about the bread aisle in the supermarket. You have basically 50, 60, 70 kinds of bread, and there are still companies to this day who got established and they think, you know what? We are gonna make bread. Because usually these barriers of entries only exist in our minds, and in reality it's a lot simpler than that. So if you ever thought about starting a BookTube channel but you think your lifestyle is not aesthetic enough, or you don't read like 20 books in 1 month, or you feel like you're not funny enough or you are not engaging enough, these things shouldn't prevent you from starting your BookTube channel. And it's enough that you just have the passion to start, and then everything else will fall into place afterwards. So these were the 10 questions that I chose for this slightly chaotic BookTube Newbie Tag. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know if you have any other questions that you would like me to answer. You can write to me in the comments below. Otherwise, I will see you all in my next video. So until then, take care. Bye!